In 1903, a survey team crossing one of the most isolated regions of the Sahara reportedly documented something strange buried beneath the sand. Their notes hinted at massive formations that did not resemble ordinary rock. Then, almost as suddenly as the discovery appeared, the trail went cold. Who exactly were these surveyors? What were they mapping in one of Earth's harshest environments? What did they believe they had found? And why do later records become frustratingly difficult to follow? By the dawn of the 20th century, the Sahara had become a battleground for maps as much as for armies. French and British survey teams crisscrossed the central desert, driven by more than curiosity. The French Service Géographique de l'Armée dispatched annual expeditions from Algeria and Chad, their caravans heavy with theodolites, barometers, and stacks of blank map sheets. Each mission was tasked with charting the unknown, pinpointing water sources, tracing ancient caravan routes, and searching for mineral wealth that might tip the balance of empire. In 1903 alone, 2 French missions operated in parallel. Lieutenant Colonel Louis Gautier's geological party swept through the Ténère and Erg Azougi, while Captain Henri Barron's team mapped the Hoggar Mountains and established telegraph stations to secure French control. Across the desert, British interests overlapped. Major Arthur Miller's Royal Engineers, under the Royal Geographical Society's sponsorship, moved through the same corridor, gauging the feasibility of a trans-Saharan telegraph and gathering intelligence on local Tuareg networks. These were not isolated adventurers, but official surveyors working under military orders, their findings destined for government archives and scientific bulletins. Their field books recorded precise coordinates, geological sketches, and coded dispatches sent by telegraph or even carrier pigeon from remote outposts. The logistics were daunting. Survey parties travelled with camel caravans, local guides, and armed escorts, moving at the mercy of waterholes and sandstorms. Every observation had to be weighed against the risk of hostile encounters and the limits of endurance. Yet the pressure to produce reliable maps was immense. Colonial administrators demanded accurate charts to redraw borders, control trade, and plan new infrastructure. In this environment, even a fleeting anomaly, a stone formation glimpsed beneath the sand, could be dutifully logged, filed, and then lost in the shuffle of bureaucracy. The 1903 report, whatever its true contents, was born from this collision of ambition, hardship, and the relentless drive to make the desert legible. In 1903, a desert survey party crossed the Sahara, with their lives shaped by the demands of the landscape. The team relied on compact theodolites for measuring angles, brass sextants for celestial navigation, and plane tables for mapping lines straight onto paper. Each instrument was packed in leather cases, strapped to camels that moved at a deliberate pace, carrying up to 270 kilograms of gear, food, and water. Each morning, surveyors climbed dunes or rocky outcrops to set up before the heat warped the horizon. A chronometer, wound and shaded from the sun, kept time for longitude. Barometric altimeters, sensitive to every shift in wind or pressure, gave only rough elevation. Every reading was logged in thick, leather-bound notebooks, pages marked by sweat, sand, and the pressure of time. Notes recorded coordinates, terrain, and sketches of anything out of the ordinary, all in French or English. Water was rationed from goatskin bags, refilled only at trusted wells or oases. A single error in calculation or navigation could mean days without resupply. Local guides, often Tuareg or Hausa, navigated by memory and stars, steering clear of danger. Armed escorts, colonial infantry, sometimes with a mountain gun, watched for raiders. Messages travelled by telegraph from isolated stations or by carrier pigeon when out of range. The pace was slow, 15 kilometres on a good day, less if sandstorms or illness struck. Even a small observation, a geometric stone, a buried wall, might never be seen again. Every detail had to be captured in the moment, with the knowledge that the desert could erase it overnight. The mission was to gather data, not chase legends. On a morning in May 1903, the field notes from Lieutenant Colonel Louis Gautier's team recorded a feature that did not belong to the ordinary catalogue of dunes and rock. The entry, written in careful script, described a compact limestone block, 3 meters high, partially exposed, with joints nearly orthogonal. Gautier's words stopped short of any claim. He noted what was seen, not what was believed. The sketch beside the text showed a rectangle, 2 corners protruding cleanly from the sand, each angle measured twice with a theodolite before the sun's glare blurred the lines. There was no mention of mortar, no sign of tool marks, only a note that the stone's edges ran straight, not as the wind shapes, but as if by measure. Across the desert, Major Arthur Miller's Royal Engineers logged a parallel observation. His journal, dated 22nd of June, described a rectilinear stone wall 4 meters in length, half buried near a dry wadi. Miller's tone was reserved. The language was almost clinical. He wrote, "Possible ancient fort, need further investigation." He added a simple sketch, a line bisected by sand, no embellishments, only a scale and north arrow. Both men, trained to distrust first impressions, left open the possibility that wind or water had shaped the stone. Yet the geometry troubled them. In a landscape where chaos rules, straight lines and right angles demand attention. The French after-action report, filed that July, spoke of orthogonal joints suggesting a man-made origin, but it included a caution that verification was required before publication. The phrase appears again in the margins, underlined, as if to remind any reader that the desert can deceive. No photographs survive, only these sketches and measured words. The geometry, right angles, parallel faces, a block that stood alone, remained unconfirmed but impossible to ignore. In the journals, the feature is neither monument nor ruin, only a stone, set apart by its order in a world of drift and collapse. For the surveyors, restraint was a matter of discipline as much as doubt. Their notes captured what the eye could prove, a buried form, angular and precise, out of place in the dunes. The mystery was left open, each line of the field book a quiet invitation for someone else to return, measure again, and decide what, if anything, had truly been found. A single sketch, drawn in pencil on a weathered page, carries the weight of everything that followed. The surveyor's lines are deliberate but spare. A rectangle with 2 corners showing, each side measured twice, each angle checked against the theodolites reading. In the margin, a note in French, orthogonal joints, verification required before publication. No photograph was taken. The camera, packed for weeks against dust, never left its case that day. The sun was already too high, the team pressed for water, the sand threatening to reclaim the find before a plate could be prepared. What remains is only this: a field sketch, a few sentences in a journal, and a formal report that stops just short of any claim. The distinction matters. In the language of the survey, a sketch is not a declaration. It is a record of what was seen, not proof of what it meant. The journal entry describes a limestone block, 3 meters high, with edges not as the wind shapes, but as if by measure. The official report, more cautious, suggests possible man-made origin, but underlines the need for further investigation. Nowhere do the documents cross the line into certainty. The geometry, so stark against the chaos of the dunes, could be the work of ancient builders, or merely the handiwork of wind and time. Even the term wall sits uneasily in the notes, shifting between natural outcrop and possible ruin. The absence of a stronger visual record leaves the story suspended. Without a photograph, without a specimen, interpretation rests on a handful of lines and words, each one open to argument. This is where the trail begins to blur. The sketch survives, but the meaning slips away, tangled in the gap between observation and understanding. And as the archive thins, the question grows. Why does the trail become so hard to follow, just when the mystery deepens? Archival trails, even those that begin with careful field notes and official reports, can unravel in quiet, almost invisible ways. The notebooks from the 1903 Sahara survey, leather-bound and filled with coordinates and sketches, were handed over to military archives in Paris as required. Yet within a decade, the French Ministry of War reorganized its files, merging old expedition records, shifting folders, and sometimes mislabeling entire collections. Auxiliary notebooks, including those with geological plates from Gautier's team, ended up stored under the wrong expedition number. Some survived uncatalogued for over half a century, only resurfacing when a historian stumbled on them in a storage basement in the 1970s. Others, like the original specimen catalogue from the so-called M site, never reappeared, lost when the Vincennes depot was bombed in 1918. On the British side, Major Miller's field journal was classified as military sensitive during World War I. The original sketch of the rectilinear wall, drawn in pencil and tucked between typed pages, was lost in a 1965 fire at the National Archives. Only a dry transcription remains, stripped of its visual context. Meanwhile, political currents shaped what could be published. In the 1930s, French authorities redacted entire chapters from the 1903 report before it went to print, erasing references to possible ancient structures that might stir nationalist sentiment. Across both empires, the chain of custody frayed at each handover. Wartime disruptions, bureaucratic reshuffling, and shifting priorities left some documents scattered, others destroyed, and many simply forgotten. Later archivists and researchers tried to reconstruct the story, piecing together fragments from inventories, published abstracts, and fading telegrams. For every page that survives, there are others that slipped through the cracks, not because of a dramatic disappearance, but because the machinery of record-keeping itself is fragile. The trail goes cold not with a vanished team, but with paperwork that drifts as easily as sand. Attempts to relocate the mysterious stone feature soon ran headlong into the realities of the desert itself. Later parties, both French and British, returned with coordinates and sketches in hand, but the landscape offered no certainty. The sand, restless and unyielding, had shifted again. What had once protruded from the surface, angular, geometric, impossible to ignore, was now swallowed by a new crest or scattered across a fresh ridge. Local guides pointed to where the feature should have stood, but each arrival revealed only blank dunes and the faintest memory of a line in the earth. The 1908 French mission, led by Chef de Bataillon Pierre Lefebvre, recorded nothing but an unbroken field of sand at the supposed site. His diary notes that the wall had vanished overnight, a phrase echoed by guides who spoke of stones that come and go with the wind. In 1912, a British survey under Lieutenant Colonel Edmund Hawkins tried to retrace Miller's steps, but the route itself had become unreliable. Sand movement had erased the low markers and dry wadis that once anchored the original observation. What had been a fixed point on a sketch map was now a guess, floating somewhere in a sea of shifting reference. The desert's ability to erase is not a matter of legend, but of daily fact. Dune fields can migrate tens of meters in a single season, covering wells, tracks, and even ruins known for centuries. Surveyors in 1903 relied on visible landmarks, outcrops, old caravan trails, and the memory of a guide, but each of these could disappear in a storm. Without a photograph or a specimen, the original find became a moving target, as ephemeral as the paperwork that once described it. The result is a trail that grows colder, not just because of lost records, but because the land itself refuses to hold still. In the Sahara, even the most careful map can become obsolete between one season and the next. The Sahara has always been more than a blank expanse on the map. Beneath its dunes lies a record of human presence that stretches back thousands of years, sometimes hidden, sometimes revealed by the wind. In the Tassili Niger Plateau, Neolithic stone circles and dry stone walls remain buried for centuries, only to reappear after a sandstorm. Rock art panels, painted when the desert was green, have survived under layers of dust and grit, their colours still vivid after millennia. At Sijil Massa, the medieval trade city on the edge of Morocco, explorers in the early 1900s found stone ramparts and market streets half swallowed by advancing dunes. Even today, parts of the city's ruins vanish and re-emerge with the season, a reminder that sand is both a destroyer and a preserver. Further east, the Garamantian settlements of the Fezzan, once a network of stone-walled villages and underground Foggara channels, remained hidden until modern satellite images revealed their outlines beneath the surface. Archaeologists tracing these lines have found that entire towns, built centuries before Rome's rise, can disappear under just a few meters of sand. The Sahara's shifting surface preserves what it buries, sealing off tombs, wells, and even ancient roads until another wind uncovers them. These realities are not speculation. They are documented in excavation reports, satellite surveys, and the field notes of explorers who stumbled on stone blocks or carved wells in places thought empty. The desert's ability to both conceal and protect makes the idea of a buried structure, briefly glimpsed, then lost, entirely plausible. The 1903 report is just one fragment in a much larger story, where the sands themselves serve as both archive and eraser. In this landscape, the extraordinary can be lost in plain sight, waiting for the right moment to surface again. Desert geology offers its own explanations for the mysterious forms glimpsed in 1903. Across the central Sahara, wind and time break sandstone into neat, angular blocks. These natural joints can run at right angles for meters at a stretch, giving the illusion of a wall or platform when only the uppermost layer is exposed. In the Erg, Azugi, and Tenere, Triassic sandstone often fractures along geometric lines, while volcanic plugs sometimes weather into rectangular shapes, their edges sharpened by centuries of abrasive sand. Even a brief shift in the dunes can reveal a face of stone so regular that it seems measured by hand, not by nature. Surveyors, exhausted and pressed for time, would have known these patterns, but also understood how easily the desert can play tricks on the eye. Yet not every outcrop fits the textbook. Some features, like the block and wall described in 1903, stood out for their precision: edges too straight, corners too clean, proportions too deliberate to dismiss entirely. The possibility remains that, for a moment, something truly unusual was exposed before the desert buried it again, leaving behind only sketches and questions. Remote sensing has brought the Sahara's hidden layers into sharper focus, but not into certainty. High-resolution satellites, synthetic aperture radar, and ground-penetrating radar can now reveal subtle anomalies, lines where nothing should run straight, echoes from beneath the sand that hint at buried stone. In the region that once drew the surveyors from 1903, modern teams have recorded linear patterns and dense subsurface reflections, some matching the coordinates from those old field books. Yet each new dataset arrives with caveats. Dry riverbeds can mimic the signature of a wall. Geological layers fracture in ways that create right angles by chance. Even LiDAR, with its ability to see faint rises invisible to the eye, can only suggest the outline of something unusual, a hypothesis, not a discovery. The researchers who interpret these signals are careful. They speak of possibilities, not proof, and insist that only excavation could settle the question. Until someone returns with a trowel and a permit, the evidence remains just out of reach. The Sahara, vast and restless, still holds the power to conceal what it once revealed. The trail, for now, ends in the sand. Today, satellite imagery reveals lost cities and buried riverbeds across the Sahara, yet the precise trace of that 1903 discovery remains absent from the record. Every year, expeditions uncover new evidence that ancient settlements lie just beneath the sand, still resisting certainty. The desert's silence leaves us with questions only time or shifting dunes may answer. In the Sahara, the line between memory and myth is never truly settled.